A father and son used the latest technology to re-examine the idea that one bullet hit Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally. Luke and Michael Haag are featured on the PBS series Nova in a documentary titled Case JFK.
The single bullet theory is all about what it does after it emerges from Kennedy's neck. Does it remain intact? Is it deflected? What happens to its velocity?
How fast was it going? That's important to know. What kind of damage can we expect it to do to another gunshot victim, such as Connally, or to the car?
In these 3 feet, the space between Kennedy and Connally, lie the answers that prove or disprove the single bullet theory. They'll start with the soap.
It's very similar to Neutrogena, that clear amber soap that you can see through. This has the same density and the same resistivity to penetration as muscle tissue. I've also put this cloth on here so we can see a phenomenon called bullet wipe.
Range is hot.
5, 4, 3, 2.
And Luke and Michael Haag join us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Wow. So, Luke, what did you learn?
Well, it's easily demonstrable that one bullet can go through 2 people if you understand how this particular unusual bullet behaves and what it does after it leaves Kennedy's body.
What kind of bullet and how does it behave?
Well, here's the bullet, or an example of the bullet. This is a 6.5 millimeter Carcano bullet made by Olin Winchester. It's extremely stable, which is what people didn't understand then, they don't understand now. So it will go through a lot of material, and then when it comes out, it starts tumbling or going into yaw, and that's how it hit Governor Connally, in yaw.
Explain the yaw. That's the...
Yaw is like a badly thrown football. A bullet normally flies true and straight. When this bullet emerged from Kennedy or any ballistic medium, such as you saw a moment ago, it's now yawing and tumbling. And the entry wound in Connally is very important because it's the consequence of a yawed bullet. So it had to be a destabilized bullet from somewhere.
So you do believe, Mike, that it was just one bullet?
As far as the neck wound to the president and then the wounds to Governor Connally, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Did you have any doubts about anything from your investigation?
Well, I think that in any shooting incident, you're never going to have the physical evidence that provides you with a complete 100% picture. We still have one shot that's basically unaccounted for. But for the most part, when you lay this physical evidence out on the table, it is a very clear picture.
Does Oswald have to have been a very good marksman to have accomplished this?
Not at all. I've shot this drill these distances with a firearm that my dad acquired that is exactly the same as Oswald's rifle with ammunition of this type. These are not really tough shots.
Yeah, and you said anybody who thinks that you have to be a marksman hasn't fired this kind of gun before. This Carcano was a very cheap rifle. It was only less than $13, and the scope on it was $7 plus. That many people could have had access to and used.
Well, a lot of people back then collected old military rifles. This rifle's been disparaged as being dangerous, inaccurate. It's not. If the bore in the rifle is good, it's a good shooter, and it was a good shooter, unfortunately for President Kennedy.
One more time, what did 3D technology do that made your analysis different?
Mike's answer on that one.
Same thing, right?
The 3D laser scanner that was used is something that's really coming into play in forensics now. Since about 2005, 2006, this is a new tool that a lot of law enforcement agencies are bringing into play. And it's a way of documenting crime scenes more thoroughly, more completely than we ever had the capability to do. So we walk away from the crime scene with more information, and we can then examine the crime scene over and over again later on a computer. So as we get new hypotheses, things, people talking about where a shooter might have been in a new revelatory type place, well, we can just go into that software, take some calculations, take measurements, angles, it's all right there.
Yeah, you guys were able to recreate it within 1/8 of an inch, which I thought was astounding. But you said something very interesting, quoting Sherlock Holmes. You rule out the impossible, and that which remains, no matter how seemingly improbable, is the truth. Elaborate on that, Luke.
Well, it's the basis of what's called the scientific method. If you're a scientist, a forensic scientist, you try to rule out hypotheses, not go into it with an idea, I want to prove something.
So you were ruling out what in this case? As it applies to this case?
The usual, the most common conspiracy hypothesis, shots from the grassy knoll, 2 shooters. If a thoughtful person is willing to look at the physical evidence, that's step 1, and understand what that evidence is and what it's telling us, then you'll come to the correct conclusion. Physical evidence always supports the truth of the matter.
Luke and Mike, how did you guys come up with the idea to do this, to test these theories?
Well, this is, of course, the 50th anniversary. I thought about that. This is the classic shooting reconstruction case. Originally, it was a firearms identification case primarily. Do we have one gun or two guns? If it's one gun, is it that gun, the gun in the 6th floor museum? If it's that gun, whose gun is it? Those questions were all answered, but the question about multiple shots, the behavior of the bullet that goes through Kennedy and becomes the single bullet theory became controversial because, again, people didn't evaluate it, they didn't understand it, and they hadn't looked at it then, and few have looked at it now. So that's my position.
That may be the answer to the question I wanted to ask you. Why is there so much skepticism? Or is the skepticism among few but loud?
Yeah.
Shall I take it?
Go for it.
Yeah, take it down.
I really think it's in our nature. We want to think there's more to it than just a loner, loser, deranged Marxist who hated his country and took an opportunity. There's got to be more to it than that. Bugliosi has a wonderful statement. A peasant cannot strike down the king. Think about it. A nobody did.
And change the world, change
Absolutely.
the course of history.
Well, thank you.
Luke and Michael Haag. The name of the show is called Case JFK, premieres Wednesday on PBS's Nova.